I'm attorney Phil Jusino, and this is Finding Common Ground here on Altice. You can see this show every Saturday, channel 115, 10 a.m., and also at the same time and thereafter on my YouTube channel, Phil Jusino. Got a great show planned for today. The date is April 15. The show will air on April 18. The two special guests we have, Under Sheriff Steve Huehhas of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office, and also Jannete Murphy, who is a teacher, an art teacher, at a school in Nassau County, a Catholic school. So without any further ado, let's get to it. I have Steve Huehhas on the line. Steve, are you there?
I am, Phil.
How are you,
Good
Steve?
evening. How are you?
Good. I'm going to give you a little intro. Steve is one of the two undersheriffs of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office. He is also a former East End Bureau Chief in the District Attorney's Office, and that's how I met Steve back in August of 1989. Remember then, Steve?
I do. You were just a baby then, Phil.
I was so green. And in fact, about 2 weeks before, I had to cancel my honeymoon because you know that training program they put you through where they really don't teach you the practical stuff, but you're trying like a murder case in a mock trial setting, and then they throw you in and you got to know what a 511 is. So I showed up. There was a Friday. I had to pick up the booklet for the training program. And I walk in, and a woman comes out, and she's wearing a pair of blue jeans and a shirt, and she's about my age. And she says, here's the training program, learn it, and then come back or whatever. So at that moment, I said to her, oh, are you one of the secretaries here? She said, no, I'm one of your supervisors, Marcy Rudner. So I started out really well, but everything was great. But I got to say this before we begin. You took me under your wing. When I started there, like you said, I was a baby. I had graduated Fordham Law in May. I took the bar. I started sometime in August, right around my birthday. I think I just turned 25 years old. The training program really doesn't prepare you for the trenches. Maybe now it's better. I know they have training programs. We didn't have them. You know, they send you upstate or something like that. We didn't have them when I was there. And
no, they didn't have that when I started either.
Right, and you started before I did. And I found you there. You were the one that took me under your wing. You taught me, and I got to say this honestly, you taught me more practical things than anybody else in that office while I was there shy of 2 years. And I remember you took me to get my badge. Remember that day?
I do.
You took me to get my badge.
That was a big day.
That was a big day, right? Took me to get my badge. We tried to get a gun. That didn't work. I'm only kidding. You took me on an investigation at this big house on the South Shore. When we got back, Rita said, next time, guys, let the detective investigators go. I don't know if you remember that day.
I always disregarded that.
I know you did. And I luckily, I didn't lose my job, but I'm looking at, I didn't say anything, but I'm like, Steve, maybe go. But anyway, so I got to thank you. In fact, I admired you so much that I almost grew a cool mustache like you had. But I figured it would take me too long, so I didn't. And I know your boss very well, Errol Tulin, great guy. I've known Errol for many years. And in fact,
hockey player.
Hockey player, and I played baseball against him. And I don't know if you knew this. When you see him next time, tell him Phil Jusino said that he is one of the better high ball hitters that I've seen. You would throw a ball at his eyes, and he'd hit that ball in the gap for a double. That's how strong and powerful the guy was and still is. But anyway, so I want to ask you a couple of questions. One of them is, what exactly does the sheriff's department do?
Well, first of all, it's a large organization. It goes back to the King of England.
Wow.
We're probably we are the oldest law enforcement agency in the state of New York, and we're one of the oldest in the country, the sheriff's office, because you go back to shires and things like that, and you had a sheriff, and then the sheriff could appoint deputy sheriffs, and they would patrol the shire, So when you fast forward to, what we have today, we have two divisions. You have the correctional division and you have the police division. The police division, they are the deputy sheriffs. The deputy sheriffs are police officers. I get that question a lot. They know, what's the difference between a police officer and a deputy sheriff? They are police officers. They're just like state trooper.
You can
trooper
make an arrest.
Is a police officer.
Sure.
Yeah, so deputy sheriffs are police officers. They have the same exact law enforcement powers. But the deputy sheriff side, the police side, there's only about 270 deputy sheriffs compared to we have about 800, almost 900 correction officers.
Wow.
Right, and so the police division is small compared to the Suffolk County Police, although it's large compared to a town or village police. And the police division, the jurisdiction of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office is the entire county, whereas the Suffolk County Police, it's within the 5 western towns
I see.
of Suffolk County, and not the East End. But one of the major differences between the deputy sheriffs and a police officer in another agency is that they have civil enforcement powers as well.
I see.
And you being an attorney, Phil, I'm sure you've handled evictions, judgment, execution on judgment orders. When people sue people,
Right.
And it's the deputy sheriffs. That's the civil side, and that we have a civil division. As deputy sheriffs will go out and they will, unfortunately, they just follow the order of a court and evict people.
Right. They have to do their job.
They have to do their job.
Right. Quick question. Now, the Suffolk County Police Department came about, I believe it was in the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, actually 1960.
Okay, 1960. Right, I wasn't born yet. You were born, right?
Yes, I was.
Little baby. Before that came about, there was obviously New York City, the NYPD and all that, but who patrolled Suffolk County in 1959 and prior?
Well, throughout Suffolk County, it was predominantly town and village police departments. So you live in the town of Smithtown, so Smithtown Town Police Department.
Actually, I'm in Brookhaven. I grew up in Smithtown.
Yeah, Brookhaven Town Police Department, Islip Town Police Department. And then you had individual villages that still exist today, like in the western part. You have Amityville. Their PD they elected not to join the Suffolk County Police when it was starting. Same with Northport. They have their own police department, village. Which the East End is predominantly all town and village police departments. So prior to 1960, in the West End, it was town and village PDs, and of course the state police and the sheriffs, the deputy sheriffs.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Now, as an undersheriff, there are 2 of you, right?
Yes.
Okay. What are the duties of the undersheriff? I know there's one sheriff, and that's Errol Tulin, and there are 2 undersheriffs. So you're like the VP in a sense, in terms of like a president VP.
Yeah.
What exactly do you do?
Now it's interesting because when I was in the district attorney's office, I never dealt with an undersheriff. I dealt with investigators from the sheriff's office. I prosecuted inmates who committed crimes against correctional officers, but I never dealt with an undersheriff. And I guess because throughout the years they were coming from different backgrounds. So there were times when undersheriffs had no law enforcement background at all.
Right.
So they were appointed by that particular sheriff, and so there was no reason to have to contact them because they had no experience in law enforcement. However, when you fast forward to more recent time, you did have Under Sheriff Tisch, who had been former Judge Tisch.
Al Tisch, sure.
And he had been a prosecutor even before he was a judge. And then you had one of his undersheriffs was Under Sheriff Sullivan, who had been a bureau chief in the district attorney's office. So I'm not the first one.
Was that Eddie Sullivan?
Huh?
Was that Ed Sullivan? What's the first name?
Don Sullivan.
Don Sullivan. Okay.
Right. So, but it was rare that you had that. Now, with me, when Sheriff DeMarco appointed me, I was in my 30th year in the DA's office, and I applied.
Wow.
He had put a posting, but I applied, and then I interviewed, and he offered it to me. And I came over, and I brought all that experience with me, all my contacts, and I gave a lot of legal advice to all the PDs and the sheriff's office. Sure. So I'm in-house doing that too. And then when he appointed Under Sheriff Catalina came from the NYPD, and he had been a deputy chief. First of all, a wonderful guy, extremely bright. Comes with unbelievable experience because he oversaw the gangs in the city of New York, the gang division. He also the counterterrorism, which is huge, as you know, in New York City. Mm-hmm. So he's a wealth of experience and knowledge. And then so you have me, you have him, and you have Sheriff Toulon, who has all those years of corrections in the city. Right. Plus, he went back as deputy commissioner. So collectively, between the 3 of us, we have a lot of experience in law enforcement. The undersheriff position in general, that's a position that goes back to the beginning as well. Like I'm a historian. I like to read, especially history of the West, and Wyatt Earp. Sure. All these guys, they were undersheriffs and then sheriffs, and then they became federal marshals. Right. Went back to being sheriffs or undersheriffs. But you were the right-hand man of the sheriff. Mm-hmm. And when the sheriff is out of for instance, that today this exists, this law. If the sheriff is incapacitated or out of the country, then I become the sheriff by law.
I see.
So, and it's funny because when Sheriff DeMarco was on his way out, he said to me, "I'm gonna let you be sheriff for 3 days. I'm gonna end it 3 days before the new year."
Okay.
So I said, "Oh, thanks." And then there were times when Sheriff Toulon was out of the country, so I assumed my duties as sheriff.
Sure.
Yeah, that's under the law, because that's why we have first undersheriff and second undersheriff. I'm the first undersheriff, and Undersheriff Catalina's second undersheriff. But you do the same duties as the sheriff. But what he does is, the way Sheriff Toulon did it, he says, "All right, Steve, I'd like you to oversee the corrections division. I'll have Kevin oversee the police division."
I see.
And that's great, because before Kevin came, I was overseeing everything, and it's a lot. There's a lot to think about. It. You're dealing with the union issues. You're dealing with, I oversaw a lot. Internal affairs and medical evaluations, also the daily stuff, the administrative stuff. It's a very large organization, and so when Kevin, it was great when he came, because then he was able to do that. Now I do oversee joint divisions, because there are divisions in the sheriff's office that include both deputy sheriff and corrections investigators, like internal affairs. I oversee that. That's both. Medical evaluation unit. That's both deputies and corrections.
Wow.
Busy
guy.
Personnel investigations. When you try, new employees, background checks and stuff. That's both. So we do. So I oversee a couple of the divisions that have both corrections and. But since I'm first undersheriff, I could be. I technically oversee everything.
Now, as a former prosecutor, you bring a certain skill set to the job that you don't really see every day. Where the person was a prosecutor, now is an undersheriff. What skill set, things that you learned as a prosecutor, do you bring to the job?
Well, think about all the police paperwork I've reviewed
Warrants.
as a prosecutor. Oh my God, right? For sufficiency, just on sufficiency, right? So what I bring here is, since I used to do that for all the police departments, including the sheriff's office, I could do that with my guys. And that's both, every time there's an incident with an inmate, there's an incident report. It's sort of like an arrest report, right?
Sure.
And you as a lawyer understand the importance of articulating the facts. Right. So I'm able to basically be a teacher, in-house teacher, with regard to, proper paperwork and going over it. And they could actually call me before they do it. And I look over drafts. I used to teach that to the, all those years in the DA's office. Think about how many times I gave courses to the PDs in the East End on search and seizure, evidence collection. Also, like, one of the big topics was paperwork. Because as a lawyer, too, and former prosecutor, paperwork can kill a case.
As a defense attorney, we look for any little mistake or any inconsistency in the paperwork.
Yes, and think about if I ever went into private practice, which I won't, but if I did, I could spend hours cross-examining a police officer on his paperwork.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm able to do that. So that's one of the things. The other thing is, we do have officers that they have to testify in court, not only in court but grand jury, and so I'm able to prepare them. The DA's office prepares them, but I actually give them a little tutorial on grand jury, what to expect. This is what it's going to be like. Especially if it's their first time, easing their stress before they go, especially corrections, because unlike the police, corrections, it's rare that they have to testify,
I got to cross-examine a corrections officer in a civil case, believe it or not. There was somebody, this is years ago, before you were there, and it was an individual that was mistreated. That was the allegation at the jail, Suffolk County Jail, and I had to cross-examine 2 corrections officers. This was not a criminal case, but they still had to be prepared to answer the questions and all that. So that's something that, but it is, in fact, I spoke to one of them, and you're right, they do not, like a cop. A cop who does DWIs, he's testifying all the time. But
right.
Someone like that, they're not testifying that often.
They're not. Right, and in your case, did it involve the county attorneys?
That particular case, no, it did not.
Oh, okay. So, for those of you who don't know, like there's the Suffolk County Attorney's Office, they defend the county when there are lawsuits brought against the county, and a lot of times lawsuits involve bringing them, arrestees, bringing them against police, or
I stand corrected.
Inmates bringing them.
It did. Yeah. I'm thinking this is a long, long time ago. It did involve the county attorney because obviously we were suing. At first, the case was dismissed by one of the judges. We had to appeal, got the case back, and then went to trial.
Oh, you mean it got dismissed on summary judgment?
Yes.
Initially?
But then we appealed it, and with the help of my dad, we wrote the brief, and we got it reinstated, and then it went to trial in Suffolk County.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, inmates, bring a lot of grievances. Actually, it's a small collection of the same inmates that bring all the grievances. They bring grievances, but they also, file lawsuits. And
I can imagine.
99.9% of them are, frivolous.
They're tough cases to bring because even trying to get witnesses, some of the guys that were in the jail with him, they don't want to come and testify.
They're not going to come in, right?
Because if they go
inmates,
back
they
there,
hope that the county settles with them. But when push comes to shove, there is no okay. And that's the thing is, we do have cameras in the jails. I mean, in both Yaphank and in.
But I don't know if you had them way back when. This is so long ago. I don't think you had them at the time.
Yeah. Well, the cameras today that we have, I mean, it's really helped us because here's what I do. Here's another thing, Phil. You asked me about what I bring to the table as a former prosecutor. When an inmate makes a complaint or files a grievance or anything like that, sometimes you have a PREA issue. An allegation of sexual assault that an inmate brings against, say, an officer.
Right.
And when you read it, it's obviously false because it could not have happened like the way they did. But we have to investigate it.
Sure.
We have a PREA officer, and then also we have internal affairs. We start investigating it, so they go right to the cameras. And if it shows that the inmate's lying, I tell them, and this is a key. I go, make sure you get a sworn statement from the inmate.
Lock him in. Lock him in. Right?
So if he does, then I have evidence that he's lying. We charge him.
Filing a false
we'll charge him with
statement,
offering a false instrument for filing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Steve, I want to
you can't tolerate that.
You can't. And it sends a message because if you get that guy and other people hear about, oh my God, they got cameras and this guy's case was dismissed, they're less likely to follow.
Inmates are copycats. They one guy does something, they all start copycatting. Yeah.
Right. Especially if it works. Now, let me ask you this. Let's discuss Suffolk County Correctional Facility in the era of COVID-19. Now, you hear on the news all the time, some municipalities, even the city, are turning some guys loose because they don't want them to get COVID-19. Now, I heard Errol Tulin, the sheriff, on Fox News today. And in fact, I didn't join it from the beginning, but I heard the end of it. And I get the impression that the prisoners aren't going anywhere. Unless they're ill and I guess they have to go to the hospital. But I don't think there's a plan to let these guys free temporarily.
No, and for lay people, we don't have the authority to let people go. Anyway, we only let people are here because they're ordered here, as a sentence or they're held on bail, and that's a judge's order. So we don't have the authority to release. Even if we wanted to, we can't release people. Just let them go. We just can't do that.
Sure.
Unless you have some kind of unique furlough program. But furlough is only 72-hour unsupervised, and of course that's not going to work in the age of Corona, and then because he has to come back, But we don't have that authority. But what's going on is that it's predominantly the Legal Aid Society has brought a number of orders to show cause. With a CPL 440 subdivision 2 motion. That's initially what they did, which I scratched my head because that's usually you're saying it was an illegal sentence, And but they brought that action, and it was heard by New York State Supreme Court Justice Cohen. What happens is in this age of Corona, a lot of times when it comes to corrections, and we live in New York, people associate corrections with Rikers. So what goes on and what they read in the news coming out of Rikers Island, the city, they think that that's what's going on in the local facilities like Nassau and Suffolk. When you look at Rikers, you'll see a number of inmates have been infected by the coronavirus, and you see a number of correction officers have been also affected. In fact, I think 2 correction officers died from corona, I guess, affecting their other health issue, and they died. And so the Legal Aid Society brought actions in the city, and they were able to have inmates released. So they brought the same action here, but it doesn't really apply because up until just a few days ago, we had 0 inmates with coronavirus. And we had like a less than 10 correction officers over a period of time had tested positive. And what happened was we even before you see like the government lockdowns of this and that, we did that already. The sheriff said, you know what, because he worked corrections and he knew that we better be prepared. So we started a plan, thanks to bail reform, which I don't like bail reform,
Right.
but
This is the
bail
one. This is the
reform-
one positive from it. Less people in jail.
And one positive is it freed up space for us that we were able to
Right.
to establish quarantine areas because we have the space.
Right. You didn't before.
So in Yaphank, the newer facility, we actually dedicated these pods are like the size of a football field. They're not little pods; they're huge, with individual housing, even with separations between the various levels of the housing. And so we, any incoming new arrest, someone held on bail, we had them quarantined for 14 days minimum, even before they did all this.
Sure.
So they went into an individual housing. They didn't interact with other inmates, and it worked out because the defense attorney, the cases would get adjourned past the 14 days. In those beginning stages, there were numerous meetings between the courts, the defense bar, its legal aid, the regular criminal bar association, which I belong to, and then also the law enforcement and the jail, and so there was this consensus that this is going to get more serious, and we have to work together. So part of it was establishing the video conferencing, and then also adjourning their cases so we don't have to worry about bringing inmates before we had the video conferencing, bringing them back to the courthouse.
Sure.
So we were able to do that. So we had the quarantines. We still have it for males, females, incoming arrests. We also, any officer who says to us, it turns out so-and-so got tested positive, and I was exposed to that person like 4 days ago. We said, all right, you stay home for 14 days.
Got it.
Just in case. You don't have to have any symptoms.
Can't take chance. Now, they used to have more video conferencing. I remember they used to have those little booths.
Yes.
In the attorney
They still
lounge.
do that, but now what we did is we stepped it up because of what's going on. What we do is new arrests still go to central isolate, to the lockup there. However, the arraignment is done in the lockup through Skype.
Right.
And I've gone over to watch it, and it works really well.
It does.
I'm sitting there. I'm there, and they bring the arrestee in. He sits in a chair with handcuffs on. Then he's facing the screen. There's the judge, the defense attorney, the district attorney's office, and the court clerk. You see them.
That's it.
The judge, and the judge goes through the whole thing. They are electronically served. The court acknowledges that, and the guy acknowledges that he understands.
Less moving around, moving the guy. CI,
Orders of protection, everything is working. It's all working.
That's good.
And so the bottom line on all this with the jail is we're limiting. We shut down any civilians coming in, so you don't have, other than the medical people coming in. No longer do you have like the BOCES coming in. We don't have any of the counseling or anything like that. We had to stop all. So the unnecessary entry into the buildings, we had to stop. And that helped us because, we only had one inmate test positive, and that was recent, and that inmate was isolated, and that inmate was also, he's already been to the hospital, he stayed, and then they cleared him to come back to the jail.
Very fortunate, only one. Listen, Steve, we got to wrap things up. I have another guest I got to bring on, but listen, I really want to thank you. What I'd like to do in about a month or so, when hopefully this whole thing blows over, I'll bring you back, we'll do an update. And hopefully,
that'd be great.
Hopefully, you'll have some good news, and everyone in the jail weathered the storm, and no corrections officers got sick. Because obviously, you'd hate to see people suffer like that. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
They're like you said, Rikers is a different world. I've been to Rikers one time, and it's a different world. Anyway, thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate it. You stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Phil, and I appreciate you having me on. Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to have my producer get on the phone, Jannete Murphy. What I'm going to do is when I finish up with Jannete, I'm going to talk a little bit about liberty. I want to start off with a couple of quotes from Franklin, Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and we're going to get into liberty in the era of COVID-19, which really tests the limits of what government can do to us. So as soon as I have Jannete on the phone, my producer's going to let me know, and we're going to talk to Jannete. Murphy is my cousin, my first cousin. My dad and her dad, brothers, and she is an art teacher in Nassau County, a Catholic school. Do I have Jannete on the phone?
Hello there.
Hi, Jannete. How are you?
Oh, good, thanks. Hanging in there.
Good. Thanks for being patient. Now, you're an art teacher at a Catholic school. I believe it's in Nassau County, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And how old are the kids you teach?
Oh, I teach elementary level, so my students are from pre-K up to 8th grade.
All right.
So it's a big range. So
Now,
from 4 to 13.
now when you do, is it painting? What kind of art do you cover?
Oh, I cover a lot. My upper grade, 7th and 8th grade, we do a lot of studio art, meaning we do still life drawings. I teach them technique, some different kinds of technique for drawing using charcoal. The little kids, we do story time, and we typically do an art project revolving around that particular story that I read them, and it's all sorts of mixed things. It's a lot of stuff.
Now, in the era of COVID-19 where you have to teach from home, how do you do that? Because a lot of what you do is hands-on. We were talking about it before the show, like a music teacher, or let's say an art teacher like yourself, or a gym teacher. Those are hands-on as opposed to a history or an English teacher. How do you teach a lesson to somebody that's looking at you through a computer?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very challenging. I mean, a lot of research is involved too. I have to figure out, number one, what kinds of materials are these kids going to have at home?
Right.
Because they're under quarantine, so their parents can't typically just run out and buy what they need. And I have a well-stocked art room in school. So I go with the basics. Most kids have pencils, markers, crayons, and whatnot. And I think of projects around that revolve around that. And then I give them extra credit if they want to add extra things to it, if they happen to have paint and things like that.
Well, you know what you could do too? You say, go to your dad's barbecue pit, get some charcoal, and you could do that. Now, when you teach a lesson, are all of the kids in your class looking at you at the same time on the computer, or do you do smaller groups?
Well, what I do, I mean, it's different for many teachers. A lot of the classroom teachers, they do the live lessons. I typically don't do that. I usually record myself. I do a video, and I record myself doing the lesson because sometimes there are a lot of steps involved. If I'm teaching something and then now I have to wait for it to dry in order to go on to the next step. So I record my lessons in advance, and then I post them. We use Google Classroom as a platform. Right. And, then they go to the videotape, they go to the video, and they can watch me. And then I give them written directions as well, and I list the supplies they need. And then, when they're finished, they have to post the picture of their finished work so that I could look at it in order to give them some kind of an assessment.
And since it's taped, they can rewind it. If they miss something, they can go back.
Oh, absolutely. And I encourage the parents, especially of the lower grades, because I know like 7th and 8th graders, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are more independent. Exactly. They kind of do their work on their own. But the little ones, they need a little guidance. So it's typically a project for the families to help. And that's something we have to be careful with, too, because we don't know what their individual situations are. I know we're just dealing now with, we had these students who had a death in the family. The mother was very ill. So, we don't know what they're facing. It was non-COVID related, that particular thing. But still, they're dealing with a lot of things, a lot of stresses in the home. They're dealing with, their parents could be essential workers and, they're high anxiety. So we have to kind of be very careful with that,
now,
and what we expect.
Sure. What about, let's say, families that have one computer and they have 3 kids? Oh. So I guess they have to take turns because you only have one computer. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's a tough one to navigate because we've actually had a few parents complaining about the workload, saying that, teachers are giving too much work and they, their kids have to share the computer. Mm-hmm. We sort of give them extra work because some kids need that. Some kids need that extra stuff to do to keep them busy throughout the day.
Now, you mentioned that you're on spring break right now, right? You have a different schedule than public schools.
Yes, I'm a Catholic school teacher. So we were allotted that time for spring break because we were prepared. I mean, the diocese really did a good job in getting us prepared so that when we took our first day, our last day of school was March 13th.
Oh, wow.
And by the 16th, that Monday, we were up and running, and we began our online teaching. So, they really did a good job with that. So we were able to take our spring break.
Now, with Catholic school, how long is spring break? A week or two?
It's just a week. We had off Holy Thursday and Good Friday, which was last week, and then we have all of this week off. So we go back on Monday. But still, I still have kids. Even though we're technically not supposed to be teaching, I check my Google Classroom, and the kids are on there.
They need something to do.
They really needed something to do. So as an art teacher, that was where I stepped in, and I labeled a lot of the work that I posted this week for just for fun, because some of the kids needed something to do. And I actually had a lovely young lady, one of my 8th graders. She asked her father to pick up some things from, I guess, like CVS. They have a little section that, they have like school supplies, and they have little paints and stuff like that. So he bought her some paints, and she created this painting.
I bet the parents are appreciative.
And this was not a project. It was just something extra. She sent me the picture, and she said, "Thank you for inspiring us to keep drawing and painting, because it helps with the anxiety."
Sure. Now, how are the parents holding up? Like, I know you're dealing with the kids, but do you get feedback from the parents how they're doing?
Oh, yes. We hear from the parents. We keep an open line of communication with them. Most of them are helping their kids with their work, at least organizing. And that's one of the things that they were saying, that trying to keep their kids on a schedule is tricky, because now they tend to get up later. And if they don't have a live lesson, like if their teachers aren't doing we're not allowed to use Zoom anymore. That's another thing. I don't know if you heard about that. You know what Zoom is,
I do.
right?
How come you can't?
Okay. Schools have been told now not to use it because people have hacked
I was going to
into
say
it.
hackers figures.
And there have been cases where strangers have been popping into classrooms. And now there's a strange face in the classroom, and there were some issues.
It almost sounds comical, but that's not cool.
No, but they were putting porn on there and things like that. I've heard of that happening. So now schools
that would really change your lesson,
anymore.
Jannete. That would change your lesson.
Yes, definitely. That would be like nude drawing. I guess.
I was going to say something like in Titanic when Rose is reclining and he's painting her. That would be something like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have. But now we use Google Meet, which is basically the same thing, but it pairs with Google Classroom. So that's a much safer thing, because once all your kids are in the class, once you see they're all in, you can lock it, and that's all the only people who are allowed in. So that's a pretty good, safe thing to do.
When
and
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, at Catholic school, have they talked about opening the school before the end of the school year, which would be what, June? You guys finish up in June?
I don't know. We basically are going by what the governor says. We thought originally, the governor had originally said April 30th would be our last day, and then go back May 1st. But I don't see that as happening. I think the governor is going by a weeks to week basis.
Sure.
I think he's waiting to pull the plug on school. I don't know. I don't know what his plan is, but I'm imagining we're not going back.
De Blasio has spoken about it. I know the governor has a different opinion, but de Blasio wanted to just cancel the whole year. And the governor said not so fast.
And Cuomo didn't like that.
No. He said not so fast.
I think you can't. It has to be across the board, because I can't see saying that New York City will be closed and then have other schools open. That doesn't. If New York City's going to close, they will have to be closed.
The only thing is, but look at it this way, and look, we're in uncharted territory here. We've never had anything like this before. But what if places upstate like Schenectady or Albany or something, let's say they were totally fine and they had no cases and everything was good, and maybe Suffolk and Nassau, I know we're very close to the city, so it's a little bit different. But what if those places were fine and the city was still experiencing problems. You're saying that they might not open any place? They might say, upstate, you're fine, but you can't open because the city's closed.
Right. I really don't know. But you're talking about just the schools or opening up
No,
businesses as well,
just
like in upstate areas?
right, that's another whole issue. But no, just the schools, because what if way
Yeah.
upstate, the schools are fine? Why would they stay closed when New York City?
I really don't know. I really can't speak to that because, like you said, this is uncharted territory. But I can't see any of us here, especially, Nassau County, Suffolk County. We all have, there are a lot of cases from what I'm hearing
Oh, I know.
now.
Sure.
Suffolk is taking a big hit now.
That's where
I believe, right? I think the numbers are going up now there too. But I can't see opening up schools because, what about, you're still going to want to maintain some sort of social distancing, even still. How do you do that in a classroom of 35 kids?
I know. It's a problem.
How do you separate? They sit on top of each other, Like my Catholic schools tend to be smaller. My biggest class maybe has 20 kids in it, but they, they're sitting right there, and kids, kids are kids. They blow their noses without a tissue.
Right.
They, it's as it is during cold and flu season. It's
Bad enough, yeah. And this is worse.
Terrible. So imagine that. I mean, are we going to be going back wearing masks? What kind of, how would we be going back? That all has to be explored.
It does. I feel bad for kids that are, whether it be like NYSSMA, music or sports.
Yeah.
And not even so much, the seniors is bad enough. The juniors, a lot of times I was listening to Cal Ripken talk about kids losing opportunities. Because usually your junior year, the scouts are looking at you and decisions are made. These kids lost that year, either the junior year or the senior year, and you can't get that back. What do you do? If the kid's going to go to college next year, repeat the grade, lose out the opportunity, or people that are in different endeavors, it's very sad. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is.
I was actually just talking to my daughter before I got on the phone with you, and she was saying that a lot of colleges now are looking to do online classes going back in September.
In September even? Wow.
Yeah. So, that's another thing. I guess colleges can do that, though, because, universities have been doing online college courses,
But what about schools now? We know that the big schools, like in fact, Lisa's kids go to Alabama, and that school makes a lot of money with their football program and basketball and all. If you're doing online, do you then say, well, then we can't have sports? Because you can't have online classes and have the football team on the field.
Right.
So, and that's a lot of revenue these schools are losing.
And those are all, contact sports. So
even baseball, you're tagging a guy.
When is it okay to have contact?
That's going to be a problem going forward.
Unless that could be a new thing, social distant football.
We're going to play flag football now? I don't think people are going to tune in on a Saturday afternoon. Maybe they will, but it'll wear off soon. But listen, we got to kind of wrap things up. I really want to thank you for calling, giving us some insight, what it's like to be a teacher in the era of COVID-19. So,
thank you so much.
Thank you
for
very much.
having me.
You take care. Tell Dennis I said hello and be safe. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was Jannete Murphy. I almost called her Jannete Jusino. Cousin of mine, she's an art teacher, and she was just telling us a little bit about what it's like to teach, especially art, in the era of COVID-19, where you can't see face-to-face your students, you can't give them direction when they're drawing, you can't touch their hand and say, do this. It's not an easy thing to do. Colleges, high schools, elementary schools, it's a very, very tough time, and businesses. And I'm an attorney, I practice law. We're not going to be going back to court until at least May 4th, and that's not even looking promising. Now what we're doing is we're doing some business or Skype business. So we talk to the judge and the other attorney with Skype or business Skype, they call it. It's not the same. You don't have the client with you. You don't have a lot of time. You can't just talk to your client while you're in the middle of the conference. So it's a very, very trying time. These judges are really trying to help. I have another one coming Monday. I had one yesterday. Not bad. It's just not the same as being in court, seeing the judge. You have documents, you have your file with you, you can look at things, but it's a tough time. What I want to talk now about is liberty, the concept of liberty, because our liberty is being tested now that COVID-19 is here. And it's been here for about a month or so, where we've been shut down. I haven't been able to really open my office up with all my staff being there and people coming in and out for the past couple of weeks. Now, I want to start this section with a couple of quotes. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. That's Ben Franklin. Very, very relevant in these times. If we can but prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them, then they must be happy. That's Thomas Jefferson. And last but not least, Honest Abe said, we all declare for liberty, but in using the same word, we do not all mean the same thing. And that's very true, because right now, everything is politicized. A drug is mentioned by President Trump, and those on the left say it'll kill you. Those on the right say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and it's a game changer. Now, maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle, but it gets politicized. And we talk about when are we going to open up, and that's politicized. And Dr. Fauci says something, and that's politicized. So just about right now, we're in 2020, and today is April 15th, tax day. They gave us some more time to file our taxes. But everything is being politicized. We need to be more united. Now, the reason why I bring up liberty, because liberty is the bedrock of our country. Think about it. In the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty, life, liberty. It's mentioned second. Right? And our founders knew this. Even more than equality, liberty is the bedrock. And we see it in a lot of symbols. Think about it. The Declaration of Independence was written talking about liberty. We have the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. We have the Statue of Liberty in New York. We have the Liberty Bibbity guy. That's a joke. But these are symbols that put forth liberty. The Liberty Bell. It wasn't called even the Freedom Bell, or it wasn't called the Equality Bell, the Liberty Bell. The Statue of Liberty, that gift from France. They even knew what the principles our country was founded on. Now, just so we're on the same page, liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions by authority, and by authority we mean the government, on one's way of life, behavior, and political views. Now, that doesn't mean it's absolute. Just like in the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment talks about free speech. That's not absolute. We all hear you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Pornography is not allowed in some respects. Like you can't probably on a Saturday morning run a porn show because children are watching. So it's not absolute, but for the most part, it's close to it. Your ability to express yourselves. That's why in some countries you speak out against a leader and you're going to find yourself dead, or in the gulag. You'll be in jail or under house arrest. Something bad will happen to you. In this country, you can hold up a severed head of the president in effigy, and you get away with it, as long as you don't make a direct threat to the president. You know, we know the comedian. I won't even say her name. That red-headed comedian, or people call Trump all kinds of horrible names, and people did the same thing to President Obama, and it'll be the next president and our officials what they call Nancy Pelosi or Schumer. Right? You're allowed to do that. You can't make a direct threat. You can't say I'm going to kill so and so. Can't do that. Well, you probably can get away with it too if they think you didn't mean it, but it's not absolute. Liberty is not absolute. The government can infringe on our liberty in certain circumstances. We know that. I remember reading in the Civil War, Lincoln suspended writs of habeas corpus. So now if I have a client in jail, I can bring a motion to get him sprung. Or I've done that years ago where a client was going to be sentenced to jail and they were going to hold him. And I made a motion and I was able to get him out while before the sentence. So in other words, the case was still pending. It's called a writ of habeas corpus. You go before a judge, and the judge makes a decision. So Lincoln did that, where people had rights, but he suspended that because it was the Civil War. And our governors and our presidents are able to do certain things. In fact, in Michigan right now, they're protesting. Whitmer, she was saying you can't even go from house to house. And people are saying, they had a tough winter, we need to get out there. Give us some credit, we can be safe. Certain things maybe don't open, but certain things can open. Maybe people over 70 really need to hunker down still, whereas younger people, where it doesn't affect it the same way, should be allowed out. Now, I know when I said that on social media, I was criticized. People say, well, the most important thing is saving lives, so therefore we should all hunker down. All right, by that logic, in 2017, 2018, we lost 61,000 people because of the flu, the common flu. 61,000 people. I don't even know if we're going to lose 61,000 people in America, I pray to God we don't, for COVID-19. Now, I know we took extreme measures, and if we didn't, we would have probably lost more than that. But the question is a balance of our liberty. So can the government, to make the point with the flu, the government can say, you know what, the flu season starts around October, and it goes to May, the end of May. So for all those months, theoretically, if you kept everybody in, few people would get the flu, right? During that time, few people would die in car accidents. 90 a day die nowadays. I talked about this in a show a couple of shows ago. If we outlawed tobacco, people smoking cigarettes, we would save about 500,000 people. But at what cost? At cost to our liberty, at cost to our economy. Right now, I'm not making anywhere near as much money as I made a couple of weeks ago. Most people are, I said many people, maybe not all. Obviously the politicians who are saying hunker down, they're still getting their paycheck. Teachers are getting their paycheck. Judges, prosecutors, legal aid, I presume, are getting their paychecks. The people in private practice, the restaurants, the bars are shut down. Those people can't earn a nickel unless they have some kind of takeout service, and many of them just don't. That's not their business model. That's why Papa John's and Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, McDonald's, they're doing okay. People are driving up. And to use an example of how our liberty is affected, and there's a least restrictive means doctrine that the government has to follow. So they can't just say, you guys can't come out for 4 months. What's least restrictive? I'll give you an example. It's been reported that in some jurisdictions, people are getting tickets and maybe even arrested for pulling up to a church in their car, rolling down their window, and the priest might even be on the other side of a board or something like that, a sheet, or just at least 6 feet away, which is, we're told, stay 6 feet away. So the priest is 6 or so feet away, the person is in their car, there's nobody else around, they roll down the window and they say confession. That's being outlawed in many jurisdictions. Can't do it. But yet, you can go into a liquor store and buy a bottle of bourbon. You can go to Taco Bell or McDonald's or Burger King. I've done it. And it's a hand-to-hand transaction with the person at the window. Sometimes our hands touch. They might be wearing gloves, but I'm not necessarily wearing a glove. I'm touching their hand or the bag they hand me, the credit card they give back to me. So what's more dangerous? Now, I know you're buying a burrito, but isn't your liberty also important for your religious freedom? Shouldn't you be allowed to do that? In fact, our producer is going to put up a picture that shows a priest on the other side. It looks like a board of some kind. Now, if he's 6 feet away and he's behind a board and the person is in their car with their window down a little bit, is he in danger the same way as somebody buying a bean burrito at Taco Bell? Now, we can't outlaw Taco Bell. I go there frequently. But where's the danger? What's more dangerous? A father was arrested, former police officer was arrested, not in New York, but somewhere maybe Midwest or something like that, where he was in an open field. They showed a picture. There's nobody around. He was having a catch, I think with his daughter, and his wife might have been there. And the police came. Now, I don't know the whole story. Maybe he wised off. Maybe he said something he should have. The police took him into custody, cuffed him in front of his daughter and I believe his wife, put him in the cop car, and about 10 minutes later they apologized and released him. Maybe the apology didn't happen at that moment, but it was reported that they apologized and they said they made a mistake. Now again, I don't know the whole story, but do we want to arrest fathers in an open field that is having a catch with their son or daughter? But yet, I drove on a Saturday, I stopped at Taco Bell. And as I'm making the turn, it's right on Middle Country Road in Selden, there were more cars on that road than I remember for a typical Saturday. Tons of cars on that road. There were like 10, 15 back from the red light to my right. And I thought to myself, these people are going somewhere. You go to the supermarket, even if they have a little bit of a line, there are a lot of people in that supermarket. I saw a lady lower her mask, wet her fingertips to open the plastic produce bag. Then she's touching melons or apples or whatever. Now you're going to tell me that that's safe? Now people need to eat. I understand that. People need to work. Now again, I did a post a while back and I was criticized. People are going to die. People are going to die with the flu. People die of common cold. People die smoking. People die in car accidents. That's life. I don't want anybody to die. I have a law office. With the exception of one worker, everybody has their own office. I can make it so that when a client comes in, they can go in through a separate door, enter my conference room, which is very big. I can sit about 6 feet from them. I have a protocol now. I have one of the few bathrooms in the building. There's a common bathroom. I don't care who it is, other than my staff, we don't let anyone else use the bathroom now. There's one in the hallway. Right? That's the protocol because I want to protect my workers. Now, my dad is obviously in that category where it's a little more dangerous. He's older. I'm 55. He's older. I won't say his age. I don't think he wants people to know. No, he doesn't care. But he's in his 80s. I have another worker that's around that age. I could say to them, you guys don't come in when the rest of us are there. That's one way I can responsibly practice law. But you're taking that ability away from me and others in my situation. That's affecting my liberty. And is that the least restrictive means? I don't think so, because I can get it under control. Do we want no one to die? Because the hypocrisy, if the government wants no one to die, then we all stay quarantined for 4 or 5 months during flu season. You outlaw tobacco tomorrow. You take all our cars away, so 90 people won't die tomorrow. Now, that's extreme, and I'm not advocating that. It's almost like Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, where it was kind of tongue-in-cheek. We have to find a balance. That's why President Trump every day is, it's not natural. America has to get to work. What are we going to have left if we go into June and people can't work? Not good. Now keep in mind, the people that are telling us that, they're the ones that are getting a paycheck. It's easy for them. Because if I could sit here and get my paycheck and not be affected financially, it's easy for me to do that. I got to wrap things up. Thank you for letting me rant. I want to thank Under Sheriff Steve Huehhas of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department for being a guest. I want to thank Jannete Murphy, an art teacher in a Catholic school in Nassau County. Very quickly, if you could just put it up, Danny, I wrote a book called Divorce, A Practical Guide, a great read. If you have any questions, get the book. Or you can call me. JusinoLaw.com is my website, 631-588-3155. If you need any information, even about these troubled times, people can't file petitions, you need help, give me a call. I want to thank you for watching the show. Saturday mornings, channel 115, 10 a.m., and it also goes on YouTube, Phil Jusino. Take care.